Welcome to Heartline Stories. Today's story follows James, a millionaire who made a life-changing decision years ago, one that led him down a surprising path. After getting a poor woman pregnant, everyone laughed at him. But what happened next will leave you stunned. 8 years later, they all regret their judgment. How did it all unfold? Stay tuned to find out. Let us know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories. Once upon a time, in a big city in the United States, there lived a rich man named James Walker. James was a millionaire who owned a huge business, a luxurious house, and fancy cars. He had everything he could possibly want, except happiness. James was known for his wealth and success, but he had no real friends. He spent most of his time working and attending expensive parties. He never paid attention to the people around him, especially those who didn't have as much money. One rainy evening, while walking home from work, James passed by a small cafe. As he walked past the window, he noticed a woman sitting by herself at a table, looking sad. Her name was Emily, and she had a small coffee cup in front of her. Her clothes were worn, and she looked tired. James didn't know why, but something about her caught his attention. James walked into the cafe and sat at a nearby table. After a few minutes, he noticed Emily again. This time she was staring out the window. James couldn't help but feel like he wanted to talk to her. He didn't know why, but he decided to approach her. "Hi," James said, smiling. "Mind if I sit here?" Emily looked up, surprised. "Oh, sure," she said, a little shy. They talked for a while, and James learned that Emily was struggling to make ends meet. She worked at a small bookstore, but didn't make enough money to pay all of her bills. She lived in a tiny apartment with her younger sister, and things were tough. James felt sorry for Emily. For the first time in years, he felt something other than the emptiness of his luxurious life. He offered to help her with her bills, but Emily refused. She didn't want charity. She wanted to work hard and make a better life for herself. "Well, how about we just get to know each other better?" James suggested. They began spending more time together, talking about their lives, their dreams, and their hopes. Over time, James fell in love with Emily. She wasn't like the women he had known before. She didn't care about his money, and she wasn't impressed by his fancy cars. She made him laugh, and for the first time, he felt like someone cared about him for who he was, not for his wealth. After a few months, Emily and James became close. One night, after a romantic dinner, Emily told James something that changed everything. "I'm pregnant," she said, looking at him nervously. James was shocked. He hadn't expected this, but he tried to hide his surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked. Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't want this to happen. I know things are hard right now, but I wanted you to know." James sat quietly, his mind racing. He had always been careful with his life, but this was different. He wasn't ready for fatherhood, and he didn't know what to do. After a long pause, James spoke. "We'll figure it out, Emily. I'll support you. You won't be alone." Months passed, and Emily's pregnancy progressed. James continued to support her, but he began to feel unsure about everything. He had never planned to be a father, and he had always thought of his career as his number one priority. Emily's pregnancy made him question everything he had worked for. When their son Noah was born, James felt a mix of emotions. He loved his son, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that his life had taken a turn he wasn't ready for. He didn't want to be tied down, but Emily had become so important to him, and their son was a reminder of their shared bond. As Noah grew, James started to feel more and more distant from Emily. He was always busy with work, and he barely spent time with his son. Emily, on the other hand, was doing everything she could to provide for their little family. She took care of Noah, worked hard at the bookstore, and still managed to keep their home running. One day, after 8 years of being together, something happened that made James reconsider everything. James was attending a business meeting when he heard a knock on his office door. It was Emily holding Noah's hand. She had come to speak to him about something important. "James, we need to talk," she said, her voice serious. James looked at her, surprised. "What's wrong?" "I've been thinking a lot lately," Emily began. "I've been raising Noah alone while you've been focused on your work. I understand that your business is important, but Noah needs you. He needs both of us." James felt a pang of guilt. He knew she was right. He had spent so much time chasing success and wealth that he had neglected the people who mattered most to him. Emily continued, I've decided that I can't keep doing this alone. I need a partner, James. Noah needs a father who's there for him, not just someone who writes checks. James didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, he realized how much he had missed out on. He had let his ambition drive him away from the people who truly loved him. He had everything money could buy, but he had lost the one thing that mattered most, a family. Emily, I'm sorry, James said, his voice soft. I didn't realize how much I've hurt you. I've been selfish. I promise I'll do better. Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I hope you mean that, James. I've sacrificed so much for this family. I can't keep going like this. James took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his mistakes. He knew he had to change, and it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to try. As they left the office together, James realized that the greatest success he could ever have wasn't the wealth he had accumulated. It was the love of his family, and he was willing to do whatever it took to fix what he had broken. But would it be too late? Would Emily believe him, or had he already lost her and Noah forever? James walked alongside Emily and Noah, the weight of his choices heavy on his shoulders. The night was quiet, the only sound being the soft patter of their footsteps on the pavement. He hadn't realized just how far he had drifted from them. He had been so consumed by his work, his business, and his success that he had forgotten what truly mattered: his family. As they reached the apartment, Emily stopped at the door and turned to face James. Her expression was tired, but there was still hope in her eyes. James, I don't know if I can keep doing this, she said softly. You need to prove to me that you're really willing to change. James nodded, his heart aching. I'll do anything, Emily, I promise. I'll make it right. Noah, who had been quiet all evening, looked up at his dad with wide eyes. Dad, will you come home with us? His voice was small, but it carried the weight of years of longing. James felt a lump in his throat as he kneeled down to meet his son's gaze. I'm coming home, buddy, James whispered, pulling Noah into a hug. I'm not going anywhere. Emily looked at him, uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she saw a flicker of the man she once knew. It was a small glimmer, but it was enough to hold on to. Just don't break our trust again, she said, her voice firm. We can't keep doing this. James stood up and wiped a tear from his eye. He had a long road ahead of him, but he was determined to be the man his family needed. He couldn't undo the past, but he could try to make a better future. He owed them that much. As they walked into the apartment, James knew he was starting a new chapter in his life, one where he would no longer take his family for granted. But deep down, he also knew that it wouldn't be easy. Trust once broken was hard to rebuild. The next few weeks were filled with small steps. James worked hard to spend more time with Emily and Noah. He cut back on his business meetings and made sure to be there for dinner every night. Emily was cautious, still unsure whether James was truly changing, but she appreciated his efforts. Slowly, things started to improve. One Saturday, Emily and Noah invited James to the park. He had almost forgotten what it felt like to do something simple and fun with his family. As they played catch and watched Noah swing on the monkey bars, James realized how much he had been missing all these years. As the day came to a close, Emily sat beside James on the park bench. She looked at him and smiled, though it was a smile tinged with uncertainty. You're doing better, James, she said softly, but it's still going to take time. I know, James replied, and I'll take all the time it takes. I'm not going anywhere, Emily, I promise. But just as things seemed to be improving, a phone call changed everything. James's assistant called, informing him that there was an urgent meeting with potential investors the following morning. It was the kind of opportunity that could change everything for his business, but it also meant he would have to choose between his family and his career again. James's heart sank. He had made so much progress, but the pressure of his business was always lingering in the background. He glanced at Emily, who was watching him with a mixture of hope and concern. Emily, I don't know what to do. This could mean everything for the business. But you're right. My family comes first. Emily sighed, looking down at the ground. It's always been that way, James. Your business comes first. You've shown us that over and over." James was torn. He couldn't let his family down again. But he also knew that the business was what had given him the life he had. He couldn't ignore the fact that their financial security depended on it. The silence between them stretched on, thick with tension. James wanted to find a way to balance both his business and his family, but he didn't know if that was even possible. "I'll cancel the meeting," James said finally, determination in his voice. "I'll put my family first. I'll make it work." Emily looked at him, her eyes softening. "James, it's not just about canceling a meeting. It's about showing up every day. You have to prove to me, to Noah, that we come first, not just in words but in actions." James nodded. He knew she was right. The business had been his obsession, but he couldn't let it destroy the life he was trying to rebuild with Emily and Noah. "I understand," James said quietly. "I'll do whatever it takes." As they left the park and headed home, James felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the road ahead would be full of challenges, but for the first time, he felt ready to face them head on. His family had given him a second chance, and he was going to make sure he didn't waste it. The next few weeks were a test of James's resolve. He worked tirelessly to make good on his promises. No more late nights at the office. No more skipping family dinners. Every day he made an effort to show Emily and Noah that he truly was there for them. At first, Emily was skeptical. She didn't trust him easily after everything that had happened. But as she saw James making the effort, little by little, her walls began to come down. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One evening after Noah had gone to bed, Emily sat down on the couch beside James. They hadn't talked much about their past since that day in the park, but now, with everything settling, Emily felt it was time. "James, I've been thinking a lot lately," she began, her voice soft. "I'm not saying everything is fixed, but I do see the changes. I can see you trying, and that means something." James turned to her, his heart pounding. "I'll keep trying, Emily. I know I messed up. I know I can never undo what I've done, but I'm here now, and I'll always choose you and Noah." A tear slid down Emily's cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, not wanting James to see her vulnerability. "I want to believe that, James, but I'm scared. What if this is just temporary? What if you go back to your old ways?" James took her hand in his grip tight and steady. "I swear I won't go back. I'm not that person anymore. I've lost too much, and I've almost lost you and Noah too. I won't make that mistake again." Emily looked at him, really looking at him, as if trying to see if there was any trace of the old James, the man who had put everything above his family. But all she saw now was someone who was trying, someone who was ready to change. "I believe you," Emily whispered, squeezing his hand. "It's just going to take time." James smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in a long time. He had a long way to go, but for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. Days turned into weeks, and James continued to show up. He attended parent-teacher meetings for Noah, spent evenings reading books with him, and made sure Emily knew she was a priority. Slowly but surely, the cracks in their relationship began to heal. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Noah looked up at his mom and dad, his face lighting up with a big grin. "Mom, Dad, I'm so happy," Noah said, his voice full of innocence. "You guys are always here now, and I love it." Emily and James exchanged a quiet look. There was so much unsaid in that simple statement. They were finally together, finally giving Noah the family he deserved. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, an unexpected phone call brought everything to a standstill. James picked up the phone, his heart sinking as he recognized the number. It was from one of his business partners, calling with urgent news. He felt a cold pit in his stomach, realizing that the decision he had made to put his family first could be about to face its first big test. "James, we need to talk. The company is facing a crisis. If we don't act fast, we might lose everything," the voice on the other end of the line said. James looked at Emily, who had been watching him, her eyes filled with concern. "It's a big deal," he whispered. Emily nodded, her face serious. "I know, but you've come this far. Don't let your work get in the way now. We've fought too hard." James's mind raced as he weighed the options. His business was in jeopardy, but at what cost? He had promised Emily and Noah that he would be there for them, and now it seemed like he was facing a crossroads. "I'll make the call," James said, standing up and walking toward the door. "But I won't make the same mistake again. I won't let my family fall apart for the sake of work." Emily watched him leave, her heart filled with mixed emotions. She knew this was a big test, but she also knew James was finally learning how to balance what really mattered. The next day, James returned home after a long day of meetings. His mind was still swirling with thoughts about the company's future. But as he walked into the apartment, he was met with a warm, comforting sight. Noah playing with his toys and Emily sitting on the couch, waiting for him. "Everything's okay," James said with a sigh of relief. "The company will survive. I made sure to put the right plans in motion, but I know that I can't keep letting it take over my life." Emily stood up and walked toward him, wrapping her arms around him. "I'm proud of you, James," she said softly. "You made the right choice. I knew you would." James hugged her tightly, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He had come so close to losing everything, but now with Emily and Noah by his side, he felt ready to face whatever the future held. As the days turned into weeks and months, James kept his promises. He never let his business get in the way of his family again. And though there were still challenges ahead, James knew that the most important thing he had was the love and support of his family. He had learned that success wasn't just about money or achievements. It was about the people you loved and who loved you back. And for the first time in a long time, James felt like he had everything he needed to be truly happy. As the months went by, James and Emily's relationship grew stronger. They learned to communicate better, and even when challenges arose, they faced them together. Noah continued to thrive, and their family was finally united, the way it was always meant to be. James worked hard to balance both his business and his family life. Though he still spent time in meetings, he made sure that his family was never neglected again. He spent weekends helping Noah with school projects, taking him to soccer games, and enjoying quiet nights at home with Emily. One evening after a family dinner, Emily turned to James with a soft smile. "You've changed, James. Not just for us, but for yourself too. I can see it. We've come a long way." James looked at her, his heart full of gratitude. "I owe it all to you, Emily. I was lost, but you and Noah showed me what truly matters." He felt a quiet contentment settle over him. Life wasn't perfect. There would always be challenges, but it was real, and that was enough. As the sun set on their peaceful evening, James realized that the most important lesson he had learned was this: no amount of success or wealth could compare to the happiness of a loving family. And for the first time, he felt truly rich. Not because of the money in his bank account, but because of the love surrounding him. And so, in the quiet moments shared with Emily and Noah, James found peace. He had everything he ever needed, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. Thank you for joining us on this Heartline story. Remember, never judge someone based on their circumstances. Life can surprise you in the most unexpected ways. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.